So 3 holidays converge at once in 1 week. You all know this. You've heard Thanksgiving, right? Shabbat, Thanksgiving, and Hanukkah. The essence of this Thursday's American holiday, as you just read, is not thanks, but giving thanks. There's a difference. Something we too often forget, not just kids, but equally, if not more so, adults. The essence is not thanks, but giving thanks. That's why the holiday is called Thanksgiving. Listen to these words written long ago by someone you all know. We have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. We have been preserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no other nation has ever known. But we have forgotten God. We have forgotten the gracious hand which preserved us in this life in peace and multiplied and enriched and strengthened us. And we have vainly imagined in our hearts that all the blessings we enjoy were procured by some virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient, too proud to admit and to pray to the God that made us. It has seemed to me fit and proper that God should be solemnly, reverently, gratefully acknowledged as with one heart and one voice by the whole American people. I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States and also those who are at sea and in foreign lands to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent God who dwelleth in the heavens. Those words were written by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863. How relevant they still are tonight. We are all called upon to give thanks, and we have no excuse not to give thanks when we consider when and where we find ourselves in God's world. Last Friday night, with an entourage of 33 others, my confirmation class, we would have deep conversations each night in a friendship circle at around 11 o'clock in a ballroom at the hotel. And we discussed the question one of them posed. If you could wake up at any time and place in the history of the world, when and where would it be if you were a Jew? And the answer is right now and right here. We're not in the same shoes as the 1623 pioneers of Thanksgiving who endured bone-chilling cold, disease, and starvation, and then it was delayed 240 years. But even then, we did not and do not face the predicament expressed by Lincoln 240 years after 1623. In the midst of a civil war of unequaled and severe magnitude. We are more blessed than we realize, but too often most of us focus on what we want or what we lack rather than on how much we have. And even when it comes to what we have, are we praying for the right things? One of my favorite prayers in one of our prayer books goes like this. May we have enough failure to keep us humble. May we have enough success to keep us eager. May we have enough wealth to meet our needs. May we have enough enthusiasm to look forward to the future, enough hope to keep us happy. May we have enough faith to banish depression and enough determination to make each day better than yesterday. This Shabbat is the beginning of the cycle of the narratives about Joseph and his brothers. You may have seen it at the Orpheum or on Broadway. Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. But the portion begins not with Joseph, but with his dad, Jacob. The opening verse which Mira will chant from tomorrow, tells us, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv be'eretz Canaan, which means, and Jacob was now settled in the land where his father had resided, the land of Canaan. After 20 years of fleeing from his brother Esau, Jacob returns home to the home of his youth. Now, this wouldn't be the case for later Jews, as you all know, because wherever our ancestors were expelled from, they never wanted to go back. Whether it was Iran, Iraq, Yemen, or think about Eastern Europe. As my only son's namesake, the late Jewish historian Dr. Jacob Rader Marcus writes, few Jews in the world of 1950 lived in the same country where their grandparents lived in 1880. Between 1880 and 1915, when probably most of your family came here, the Jewish population in the U.S. grew from under 300,000 to over 3 million. And everyone in this chapel whose families arrived from other places carries the memory of other places and other times. We don't want to go back to live in Poland, Russia, Salonika, or Syria. But in this week's Torah portion, Jacob finds that he can go home again. He makes it back to Canaan. Joseph does, and Jacob does, just in time to bury Jacob's father Isaac and to live out the rest of his days, believe it or not, quietly in Hebron, the place where Jacob's dad Isaac and his grandfather Abraham had lived before him. We, the children of Jacob, whose name became Israel, are deeply rooted in our communities, especially the South. And because we Southern Jews are so deeply anchored, I think this is a great community to appreciate Jacob's relief in knowing that he had finally come home. As college students and young adults and older relatives come home to Memphis this week. And yet, as soon as he discovered that his wandering was over, his challenge was not. Don't think you're alone. What happens with Jacob? His children fight. They fight the same fight that he and his brother Esau. Jacob will witness vicious strife among his own sons. May you not. The reason why Jacob will witness vicious strife is because, like his own parents, he failed to love his children equally. Like his dad Isaac, Jacob will suffer a long separation from his own son Joseph that will only end in a joyful reunion shortly before his death. And like Isaac, Jacob will finally be buried by children, by the sons who at the end had found at least a measure of peace with each other. Jacob will learn what hopefully most of us have already learned long before our deaths, that whether you live in the land of Israel, Memphis, or anywhere else, what has sustained us as Jews and as a faith family was not one place to live, but one people to love, one God to serve, and a community wherever we went, like this one. There have been 5 grieving families this week in our congregation. 2 wedding couples alone today, thank God. But a common thread, whether it was the wedding couples or the grieving families, is one word: gratitude. Gratitude for their partner, gratitude for their loved one, gratitude for this land of their birth or childhood. From the near 104-year-old we bid farewell to the 27-year-old bride who's moving back to Memphis because, as she put it, there's no place like home. That's what Jacob will do at the beginning of this portion. We have so much to be grateful for as our festival of light begins. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv. And Jacob was now settled back in the land where his family had resided. May you, may we always feel at home, just being home, here or in Israel, and deepen the attitude of gratitude which Shabbat, Thanksgiving, and Hanukkah all call for. And let us say, Amen.